Hello. So, two things of note before I go into the episodes. There will be three, is the first thing of note, and there will be three also on Thursday because there will be none next Monday. But I don't want to lose momentum as far as seeing a certain amount of episodes by a certain time, and getting all the episodes done by I think early December is when I should be through all 52. So 330. No videos next Monday unless I come up with something clever. Let's see. And the other thing of note is that in the middle of talking, you will see me flip to the second page of notes here, and then you'll see me flip back, because I watched the episodes out of order because they're not all on Paramount Plus, and I did not realize this, even though I knew it intellectually. I just hadn't put it together as something to plan for. There are only 9 of the first season's 13 episodes available on Paramount Plus, and this is because there are a couple of reasons. The ones that I found on Wikipedia, and actually I can just pull up the thing, or can I? This is not on this page, but I remember what they were. So some of them don't have clearance for music that they play, which I don't understand the business, the legality of that, because it seems like they would have gotten the clearance for the music when they made the episode, and then from then on it's okay. Wherever the episode is, the music is okay. I don't know that side of things. The other reason is, as they put it, outdated portrayals of races, ethnicities, things like that. And I find the word outdated a peculiar word to use, because that suggests that at one point it was, indated isn't a word, but that it wasn't outdated back in 1992, I guess, when the episode was aired, that it wasn't outdated then, and which suggests that it was okay then. And I don't know what all of the problems with the episodes are, but chances are, if they're not considered okay now, they were never actually okay, they were just accepted. And something can be unacceptable and accepted at the same time. If it is not widely felt to be unacceptable, then it is accepted, but it's still unacceptable. So I just prefer the word unacceptable to outdated, but that is neither here nor there. What is here are 3 Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes, starting with The Hungry Hounds, which is available on Paramount Plus. And I did find a way obviously I found a way to watch The Tale of the Superspecs, which is the first outdated episode. I'm not going to say from here on out in videos which episodes I had to go elsewhere to find, but maybe you'll be able to gather from what I say about the episodes which ones are not on the Big Deal streaming service. So, The Hungry Hounds. I had no memory of this episode, and I didn't particularly like it. So the storyteller is Kristen, and her little helper David, with the crush, helps her with the dust because she has to hold on to the dog that she brought to the meeting. And it did occur to me, I don't think I wrote it down, but so David helps her, throws the dust on the fire, so the fire does the whoosh thing, and the title appears, The Tale of the Hungry Hounds. It occurred to me that the dog, named Elvis, sitting there in front of the fire that suddenly explodes, would have been very bothered by it, but this was a show dog, so it probably trained not to be bothered. The premise of the story, she says that Elvis is there for sound effects, but he never actually seems to provide any. I guess maybe that every so often he naturally made a noise, and that since the story involved dogs, the noise was helpful anywhere in the story. But anyway, cousins Pam and Amy, at the old family farm, they like to go up into the attic and dress up in things, look through the old chests and dress up in the old clothes. We first see them, Pam is dressed in the tuxedo that their grandfather got married in. Amy looks, she's in a wedding dress, but she also is acting like a ghost because she's all covered all in white. And they find a chest that they cannot open. And they find it in some kind of way that suggests that ghosts or spirits wanted them to find it, even though neither of them at that point believes in ghosts or spirits, but they're just a little freaked out by it, although one is more eager to get into it than the other is. Um, they find what is it? Aunt Dora. A lot of ants in these stories. Aunt Dora is the one whose name is on the chest. She was, and I didn't catch the whole story. I believe it was a horse riding accident that was a result of her failure to feed the hounds that they use for hunting, which resulted in the hounds attacking one of the servants, I guess. And that is why Pam is not allowed to ride horses, as she tries to do with somebody else's horse, which she shouldn't, because she doesn't know the horse. She feeds the horse the carrot every so often, apparently, but it's not her horse. She's not trained. It's a bad idea, so it is understandable that her mom interrupts that when that happens. Anyway, when she is not allowed to ride the horse, she and Amy, of course, naturally would go to the next best thing. They get out a Ouija board, and they, do the thing with the little finder scope. I forget what it's called. Although I have been to the building where Ouija was invented in Baltimore. It's a 7-Eleven now, but they do have a plaque, and you can visit the grave in the local cemetery of the person who invented the Ouija board, and it is itself a Ouija board. So anyway, they use a Ouija board, and they end up spelling out the words "let me out" or some version of it. It didn't seem to be exactly that. Maybe it was. I didn't catch every single letter. And the number's 149. Now the lock on the chest was a combination lock, and so naturally they go back to the chest, and they use the combination lock to open it up. Amy puts on a very nice red riding coat, like the sort of red coat that you'd use to get on a horse, and then you've got the black helmet. Not me, but maybe you if you're a horseback rider. She then seems to be possessed by a ghost, presumably Aunt Dora's ghost. Not only this, but the attic vent window thing opens, and there's a staircase leading out of it. Now, there's another Are You Afraid of the Dark episode where a door in an attic opens, and to go through it is to experience a scary adventure, and that I have very clear memories of and can't wait to get to. But that's not this episode. She, in her possessed trance, walks out into this alternate world, and then Amy follows, saying, "No, we shouldn't do this. No, this is weird," all the way to the barn, where they meet the ghost of Giles. He's the guy who was killed by the hounds that Aunt Dora forgot to feed. There's also a fox that they kept the fox, Little Red or something like that. And so the idea is they release the fox runs away, they release the hounds chase the fox, and the barking of the hounds, or whatever, is how the hunters then know where to go. I've never been on a hunt like this. I have very little interest in hunts like this, but that's the impression that I've gotten from the episode and from other depictions of hunts like this. Dora, possessing Pam, is determined to feed the hounds, which she didn't do, which resulted in so much death. So that's the ghost's unfinished business. She has to feed the hounds. They are ghost hounds, but they are very real in this alternate dimension. So they, and Amy's following her, and so they go to the barn. And I forgot to mention, they find a picture of Aunt Dora, and wouldn't you know it, she looks exactly like Pam. So then Amy follows her in, and manages to trap Pam in a stall. Meanwhile, Amy, and I don't know why, because Amy then goes to feed the hounds, which are trying to break down a door, but that's what Pam was going to do, but I think Amy thought Pam was going to do it wrong or something. So Amy's dragging the food around, and meanwhile Pam escapes, and she releases the hounds, and as Amy opens the food, drops it, the kibble spills out, the hounds run past it towards Amy, who climbs up into a thing, and then I think that's when the fox appears and runs, and the dogs chase it, and that is how they are saved. As I mentioned, I wasn't a huge fan of this episode. And then the next time we see Pam, she's on a horse, fully decked out in rider stuff, and she gallops away. Amy goes back up the stairs to the attic, and this is one of the nice things about actual physical sets. The vent window closes, and it had been daytime. It turned to night, and it turns to daytime again. But because the lights come up with the thing closed, you can see through the slats that the banisters are still there because they're physically there, and they're not magic, and they can't just disappear. They're also not computer-generated effects, so they can't just disappear, and that I liked seeing because it means it's all real, it's all there. Almost as though watching a live stage show. And Amy's a little worried that Pam has gotten trapped in the alternate daylight, or the alternate universe, but nope, she's back. She's sneezing because she's allergic to dust or whatever, which very few people, nobody's actually allergic to dust. It's just that if you get something in your nose that your nose doesn't like, your nose will try to blow it away. So I wrote some notes here. Dora, so the ghost of Dora then is no longer haunting Pam's mom, or rather her mom, I guess, probably isn't haunted by the memory of how Dora died, and so Pam is then allowed to take up riding lessons. So that's that episode. Not my favorite, but interesting. I tried all the while I was watching it to come up with some parallel, something it might have been based on, but just typical ghost with unfinished business story. There are a lot of those among Are You Afraid of the Dark? Some of them I really like. This one I just couldn't get into. So, the Superspecs, Tale of the Superspecs. This one told by Gary. And it actually opens in Gary's dad's magic shop, which he says is where he gets a lot of his ideas. And he comes to the meeting, he says that David is sick, which is a weird thing, unless they, to me, at the beginning of the episode to see it, I understood it later on, but it seemed weird at the time because, well, they write the episodes and then they film them, and then isn't that a schedule, so wouldn't the kid just have been there? Why would they have kids have sick days? But there's a reason. And Gary then asks to tell a story, which kind of makes the payoff at the end a little strange, because if he wasn't sure he was going to get to tell it, maybe it was David's turn, and without David there, it then was up in the air, and Gary had an idea, so yeah. I guess it does ultimately make sense, but my mind trying to make sense of these episodes in a reasonable way took issue with it at the very beginning. But it does have a reason, and it is all actually well planned. And in the world of that story, why wouldn't a kid skip because he got sick? Although that's the cool thing that you don't skip. You skip school when you're sick. You don't skip the cool club that you're in. And you know, before Gary arrived, there had been talk of how these stories aren't scary anymore. So, yeah. So the story begins with April Fool's, or April Fool's is approaching, and the character Weeds is in a magic store, not unlike Gary's dad's, and this is the first appearance of Sardo. Not Sardo, not Mr. Sardo, Sardo, as he is always saying. No Mr. accent on the dough. Now this guy might be one of the ethnic stereotypes that is no longer desirable. He always reminded me as a kid as a character from Aladdin. Now Aladdin takes place in Agrabah, which is not a real country, but is generically Arabic. So I had a feeling that Sardo might not be kosher anymore. But this episode also has Weeds, who is a young black kid, doing voodoo. And I think probably at the time the writers thought, well, let's make the protagonist black so that not all of our protagonists are white, and let's also give him magic that his people would do. I think that's probably what the writers were going for. Um, and a lot of good intentions like that ultimately do yield things that you wouldn't necessarily do today, and that actually might do more harm than good. But I think the intentions were probably, uh, let's try to uh, infuse it with black culture, um, so that we're not an all-white thing. Um, and of course, this is probably one of the reasons that it's not on Paramount Plus. But I think their minds were in the right place, or their hearts were in the right place. Their minds did the wrong thing. He uses ground monkey bone powder that he gets from Sardo, and he uses incantations that he gets out of a book titled Voodoo. And he uses these to, and this was where the first instance where I remembered that I'd seen this episode. He sprinkles the powder into a cup of yogurt that a girl is consuming as part of her lunch at school, and not good, whether you're black or white, to do that. And he does an incantation. I suppose the idea was it's magic, so it's not going to kill her, it's just going to do something. And as he walks away, disappointed that it didn't work, her voice suddenly becomes like a chipmunk, and she says, "I sound like a chipmunk," and that line, with that voice, is how I knew I'd seen the episode. It's always the most random things. And there was another thing later on that I knew I'd seen the episode before. Now, earlier in the store, he's got a girlfriend, and she was in the store with him, and when they first were playing with the monkey bone powder, I forget if someone sneezed, but the powder got all over these X-ray specs, and they then bought one of the X-ray specs. But I don't think it's ever clear if it's because the powder got on it or they actually were magic. Because if the powder is actually magic, other things in the store could actually be magic. But anyway, she buys the X-ray specs and puts them on and starts seeing dark figures, like figures covered in black clothes, black masks. I think her name is Emby. It's kind of like Ouija in the one of the other episodes where I think that's what I heard. Emby, maybe her name is Mary Beth and he calls her Emby or something. But boyfriend, girlfriend, never particularly lovey-dovey, except toward the end they hold hands as something intense is happening. But look like a good depiction of kids in love, or at least kids in like. So she has a couple of instances where she sees the dark figures, and when she puts on the specs, she takes them off. They're not there. Nobody else sees them. They happen to put on the specs, and they've moved on or whatever. But she throws them away, and then they reappear in her bag. So they're haunting her. And meanwhile, he is using voodoo to make impossible basketball shots. But he never sees that his spell actually works. He only does it, and then we see that it works. But he, is kind of coming to the conclusion, magic's not real. I'm just fooling around. Let's see. They reappear, and then she puts them on in her house, and she sees like a kettle is boiling, but when she puts her hand through it, it's not really there. She sees a fire in the fireplace that's not there. And then she goes back to the magic shop and demands to get in. And when Sardo finds out that the magic actually worked, he says, "Well, then it'll cost you some money for me to undo the magic," which of course he can't really do. So he wants to make a little money, and she says, "Oh, I can't pay you $50 for this." And he goes, $20, but I'm losing on the deal. And that, I think, is one of his catchphrases that reminded me, again, I've seen this guy, I've seen this episode. So they all go back to her house, and Weeds goes as well. And they sit around a table with an orb, magic, the thing that psychics use, a translucent orb, crystal ball, that's what it's called. And he casts a spell, but he doesn't finish it, and so when she puts the specs on, she starts seeing the dark figures. The dark figures are still there, and then Weed says, "Yes, but you don't need the specs to see them. They're out. So Sardo brings them into reality, or this dimension, as it were, and then he finishes the spell, and then this face, these huge eyes, come out of the darkness and berate Sardo and Weeds and Emby, and they say that balance must be restored, that they're playing with things they don't understand, and then the intense thing happens. The young lovers hold hands, and then things go back to normal. The house is back to normal, but there is one of the dark figures left, and she unmasks herself and she explains that there had been a break between the dimensions, but the dimensions couldn't live on top of each other, so one had to be put back in its place, and then she unveils the crystal ball, and Sardo, Weeds, and now she's talking to Weeds and Emby, but they are the Weeds and Emby from the other dimension, and the ones that we've been following through the episode are trapped with Sardo in the crystal ball. Now, Sardo escapes, we know, so perhaps the other two escape as well. But Gary, when they're done with when he's done with the story, he passes around X-ray specs from his dad's store as a gift. He says for the for the story, and then says that they should all put them on. And they do, and of course Dave, in a black outfit, is standing behind Gary, and they all freak out because they've been primed by the story, and except Kristen doesn't. Kristen knows, and she's the one who's actually been getting people worked up about, well, Gary doesn't tell scary stories. So I guess it was a 3-person effort, but it's a fun thing. And that was the other than the Sardo stuff and the Chipmunk line, that was the thing that I remembered very distinctly. So I'm going to try to do the last episode, which I actually missed a bit of because I was watching it and trying to figure out why I was watching it instead of the X-Ray Specs episode. This one told by Kiki, who greets everyone with a flash of a Polaroid camera and then hands around the pictures, which develop very quickly, quicker than they normally would, so the kids can react with, oh, that's a terrible picture of me. But the gist of her story is using images, capturing images as a way to steal a person's essence or soul or energy. So this family rents a cabin, and they, for vacation, mom and dad and daughter, and they rent it from this kid, and they never seem to, maybe I missed it, but they never seem to be bothered by the fact that the guy who owns and operates the cabin is a kid, teenage boy, and who dresses like he's out of the 1920s. So they also notice that the house is full of mirrors, which of course capture their image. And then he also takes family pictures of them, so that under the guise of, you'll want to remember this. So he's obsessed with capturing their image, and they have no problem with the fact that he is a child who is running their house. So the daughter at one point goes up to his attic bedroom and notices that he's got this apparatus where geraniums are living off of roses. He says that his grandfather invented it, and that the geraniums have got to survive somehow, and the roses, in this case, provide the life force. She says it's weird, but he calls it natural selection with a little help. After she leaves, he pushes a button, and the room, and again, this is all a physical set, transforms into operations central for his bigger apparatus, which is he uses the mirrors, which his guests, of course, look into, to absorb their essence, their energy, their age, and then we see him get into a chamber and de-age or revitalize. So he is, it turns out, his grandfather. Let's see. The kid, the daughter, she gets a little pimply. I don't know if it's actually affecting her, he seems to imply later on that it doesn't affect her, but her parents age uh, very quickly. And she finds a grave in the family cemetery. Peter Kirlin or Kirkin, I didn't write it clearly enough, but Peter's the first name. She recognizes it as the name of the person who owns the cabin, and sees that this person was born in 1907, does not have a death date, and she slowly puts it together. Except he arrives and reveals the whole thing to her as well. No, he reveals it later. But anyway, this is where I will reveal that we'll mention that the family that rents the cabin is black, and the kid who owns the cabin is white, and so this is many years before Get Out, but it had distinct Get Out vibes. And I won't say why, because well, let's just say that Get Out is about white people stealing the essence of black people. I won't say explicitly why, because this is not about Get Out, and I don't want to give away the big twist about that movie. You should definitely see the movie, but just see the movie. You will recognize in this episode certain, not exact parallels, and it's not like Get Out is a ripoff of this, but I saw things there that were, it was just interesting to make the comparison and to see similarities, creepy things, decades apart. Let's see. Her name is Danielle. She finds the button, transforms the room. She starts avoiding the mirrors, taking the mirrors down to help her parents, who are white-haired by now and have very little energy. And then she finds his mass grave, where he has, I've taken so many adult men, so many adult women, so many children, so many pets, and apparently buried them all on top of each other in this one place. She takes a Polaroid of him, which captures his true essence, kind of like a vampire or a Dorian Gray type of thing. And then trashes his whole apparatus up in that room and traps him in the chamber, so that when she turns it in reverse, he becomes an old man, the old man that he should be. He was born in 1907, and this is 1992, presumably when it takes place, because that's when it aired. Then that's almost 90 years. And at the end, we see him, an old man, peeking out through the window, telling Danielle, "Enjoy your youth, because it will go away." And her parents are fine, and they all decide to leave. And the parents never question what happened to them. They never seem bothered by the fact that they suddenly had white hair and then they suddenly didn't. And I don't know exactly how the energy was drained, the life force was drained back into them, but that's not the point. The point is it was scary and it was resolved. And it's got creepy ideas. So the family leaves. They never question the child landlord. They find the Polaroid that she took of him, which shows the old man, and they don't recognize him. They don't question that. And then, that's just my thing saying, don't do this one, skip to the next page and then go back. So, so the two episodes on this page, Hungry Hounds I didn't love, Captured Souls I did, The Tale of Captured Souls is what it was called, and the Tale of the Superspecs I liked, but there's another episode with faceless beings that appear seemingly out of nowhere that I have more fond memories of. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. 3 more on Thursday, and then nothing on Monday, just in case that matters to anyone watching. Thank you for watching, and enjoy Candide over the next couple of days as well. And if you can, like, subscribe, and do all that. Every so often I should say that, even though I'm not counting on it.